Welcome into week 9 of Wall Street with the Professor. How we doing tonight, Mr. Professor?
Good. How are you, Kyle?
I'm doing good. You feeling smart for us?
I mean, it's not a matter of feeling smart. I am smart. So, yes, I'm smart for you.
Smarter than everybody. That's why you're on
No, I'm
here.
feeling smart. I'm feeling smart.
All right. Well, we are over the hump in the season, heading down the back 9, looking to make some sales, trying to clean up those rosters to get ready for the playoffs. Who's the first guy you're getting rid of in week 9?
Well, great question. I gave you a running back, a tight end, and a receiver this week on the buy list. I'm going to do the same thing on the sell list. So let's start at the running back position and kick this thing off with Mr. J.K. Dobbins of the L.A. Chargers. I think Dobbins has had a nice little run this year. Surprised a lot of people.
Very surprised.
However, yeah, his efficiency is on a decline. He only went for 57 yards this past week on 17 touches. He did have a touchdown, which kind of saved his fantasy day, but I've got a bit of a concern with the possibility of them working more of Vidal into the rotation here. We've got Gus Edwards coming back from IR. That, with the lack of efficiency, really has me concerned a bit about Dobbins. He's not had the healthiest track record, and so it's kind of always lingering in the background. And then on top of that, and you know how I like to go to schedules all the time as I'm looking at player value, his rest of season schedule is brutal. I just kind of pulled it up here, kind of want to read off some of these teams for you. And it really begins this week. This week, they're at Cleveland. They have a little bit of a reprieve with Tennessee in week 10. But from there on out, you've got Cincinnati, Baltimore, Atlanta, at KC, who's number 1 in the league against the run this year. Tampa Bay in week 15, which is kind of a neutral matchup, but then right back at it again in week 16 with Denver. So it is just really a beautiful, a brutal stretch here for Dobbins. And that, combined with the other things that I mentioned, has me looking this as an opportunity to sell him if I can.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the injury history there, and I can't help but think that's got to be playing a pretty big role. He's not used to this kind of workload. He's not used to playing more than maybe a game in a season before he goes down. So all of a sudden he's this workhorse guy. I just don't think his body's built for it. And so that efficiency is going down. And I do think we start seeing Vidal start getting much more involved over the back end of the season. So
very possible.
I'm with you. All right. Player number 2 that we're getting rid of.
Well, like I promised, running back, tight end, receiver. So let's go to the tight end position. Here's a guy that was pretty popular a couple weeks back. Had a couple of nice games with the Packers, and that's Tucker Kraft. I think this week creates, again, just like I was talking about with JK. Maybe a sell window on a Tucker Kraft. Lots of teams hurting at the tight end position. You've got San Francisco on a bye, so Kittle owners might be out there looking for a replacement tight end for the week. But Kraft, for me, is a guy that if I own him and I can move him, I'm looking to move off of him. And really a couple reasons why. Number one, the guy just does not run enough routes, and he's not getting a strong target share. So he really has become very touchdown dependent in this offense. On top of that, he, just like JK, he's got just a brutal schedule here, especially over the next 6 to 7 weeks, where they're up against the Bears and the Niners. They've got a bye week coming up, and I just don't think his production is going to be sustainable. And again, teams really looking for a tight end. This could be an opportunity for you to move him and sell him and get a decent price.
Yeah, I agree. And he's basically a victim of that deep receiving roster, receiving core they have there in Green Bay. He just
Yeah.
falls into that same rotation that all those receivers are. He's going to rotate big games with Watson and Dobbs and Reed. And there's just so many mouths to feed in that offense. There's no consistency there at all. So, yeah, having his value a little bit inflated with a couple of good games, I agree. Get rid of him, find somebody more consistent.
Yeah. No, I'm on the same page.
All right. Then we got our last but certainly not least player.
Well, last week I gave you another receiver from this offense, and this week I'm going to give you a second one, and that's Khalil Shakir. Last week it was Amari Cooper. This week Shakir. Really, partly for the same reasons as I was kind of selling Cooper last week. They don't feature any specific receiver in this offense. The ball is spread around. There's a rotation that really prevents any one receiver from emerging. And this last week, Shakir went off. He had a monster game, 9 catches, 107 yards. That's it. The opportunity really to sell guys is when they have their best fantasy day. And this probably is going to be, or last week is probably going to go down as his best day of the 2024 season. And that's a great kind of opportunity to sell a player and maybe flip him for somebody who has kind of a better outlook rest of season. The other thing that I'm concerned about with Shakir, it's not so much schedule rest of season, but I can't think of any receiver that I want less than a Buffalo Bill receiver in week 16 and 17, where they play the Patriots and the Jets, who have been just brutal against opposing receivers. And, the way that this season is shaping up, especially here in the AFC East, the Bills by week 16 and 17 could have such a large lead in that division that we see them just kind of lean heavily on the run game, just like they did last year, and give Allen and these receivers a bit of a rest as they kind of get healthy and ready for the playoffs. So I'm looking at this huge week, too many concerns, red flags. I'm selling Khalil Shakir if I have him.
Yeah, and we've talked before about the Buffalo Bill receivers disappearing when it's cold in the snow, and they're leaning on that run, in the past. But they have a little bit of that Green Bay syndrome out there. Like you said, you got Cooper, Coleman, Shakir, Kincaid, sometime even Knox. Like, you've got so many guys out there that they're throwing the ball to that there's just no consistency. They're not force feeding a top guy where you see Dak Prescott force feeding Lamb or, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, that's not the type of guys I like to have on my fantasy team. So I'm
It's
with
definitely
you.
rolling the dice. You can start them, but you're rolling the dice each week because you don't know which one's going to produce.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
all right. So if you have these players, go sell them. Find you somebody that will take you to the fantasy promised land at the end of the year. And we will see you next week. Good luck in week 9.
thanks, Kyle.